Father David here. So, the question I've been asked is why should Christians care about the current immigration crackdown in our country? Is this just some kind of liberal talking point, or is it something fundamental to our faith? Well, first of all, this crackdown is affecting many of our own members of churches. Our Episcopal Church, many of our other denominations are directly impacted by this. For those of us in Hawaii, folks from the Pacific Islands, people from Tonga and Samoa, many are here on green cards. And many of them, when they came here years and years ago and as youth, had trouble with the law. Changing cultures, a new place to live, it was often difficult for people economically stressed to make their way. And yet those people today have turned their lives around. Many are role models in the community. And yet ICE seems to be targeting green card holders with any kind of criminal record, no matter their rehabilitation, no matter their contribution to society today. Second, the deportation of people to that notorious prison in El Salvador is a danger not only to immigrants, it's a danger to citizens. It's not only a danger to believers, it's a danger to every citizen. Because the Trump administration has taken the position that courts cannot oversee any presidential action undertaken pursuant to the Alien Enemy Act. That means that people who are swept up in this, according to the administration, don't even have a right to appear before a judge to say, this act doesn't apply to me. And if that's the case, then anybody can be disappeared from this country, no matter your status. And third, one of the oldest commands in all of Scripture is caring for the foreigner. It goes back to Leviticus that commands that when a foreigner resides among you, you are not to oppress the foreigner. You are to treat him as a citizen among you. Exodus, again, instructs the people not to oppress a foreigner because you were a foreigner one day and you know what it's like. Deuteronomy tells us to defend the cause of the fatherless and the widow and to love the foreigner residing among you. And Isaiah, the great prophet, issues God's command about the type of fasting that God insists upon. And it's not giving up food. It is rather loosening the chains of injustice and untying the cords of the yoke, to feed the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter. Jesus himself began his public ministry by moving directly to that piece of Isaiah's prophecy that said he is there to bring sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, and good news for the poor. And soon thereafter, Jesus is in near daily confrontations with the religious and political elites, telling them that while they're paying attention to the fine rules and regulations of religion, they need to spend more time worrying about the weightier issues of justice, mercy, and compassion. Indeed, at the final judgment that Matthew tells us about, Jesus tells us that the final judgment is not based on our foibles or sins or our attendance at various rituals, but rather how we cared for the least among us. And perhaps the objection that we hear most often is that all of that is well and good, but after all, these folks, primarily folks from Central America, are simply illegal aliens invading our country. But historical ignorance doesn't justify the current vilification of these people. Historically, the lands of Central America were unbelievably fertile, and the people lived healthy and prosperous, if subsistence lives, farming the land. And they did so until the early 1900s. And in the early 1900s, what changed is that U.S. agribusiness, companies like Dole and Del Monte, went down to Central America and kicked off the indigenous farmers from their fertile, low-lying lands, forcing them to relocate to steep mountainsides to grow their corn and other crops. In fact, some of those mountainside farms are so steep that every year farmers die from falling off of their fields. In order for us North Americans to enjoy our cheap bananas, and for decades, the CIA installed repressive dictatorships in that part of the country. FDR famously said about Anastasio Somoza, the longtime dictator of Nicaragua, well, he's a son of a bitch, but at least he's our son of a bitch. Similar misconduct occurred in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And those three countries sustained decades of civil war as people fought to throw off these repressive regimes. And as a consequence, thousands and thousands of indigenous people, along with many religious leaders, were slaughtered by government security forces. That occurred as recently as the 1970s and 80s on a massive scale, and the trauma of those scars remains today. So when the descendants of these previously self-sustaining farmers now seek a better life in the North, it is in large part due to the very active involvement of our own nation, economically and politically in that region. In short, we set the stage for this mass migration. Historical ignorance does not justify the current cruelty. And it is therefore for these historical, sociological, and simply human reasons that Christians must stand up and speak out on behalf of immigrants and migrants in our nation. It is indeed something that is required of our faith. As Jesus says on the judgment day, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom, prepared for you from the beginning of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. For I was naked, and you clothed me. Thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I was sick, and you looked after me." God bless us all.